Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, also known as Taylor with an E, and today I want to talk about the expectations of teaching in South Korea with Epic and my experience of what it's really like. So this is actually something I get asked a lot, and the answer is no, you don't need to know Korean in order to come teach English here in Korea. You're actually highly encouraged to only use English with your students, and if Korean does need to be used in class, that ideally is what your co-teacher is for, although they try to use as much English as they can too. I also had the expectation that even though we're encouraged to only use English with our students, it would just be harder, because their English levels are so low, so they wouldn't be able to understand all that we're trying to teach them using only English. While this is actually the reality, you do learn pretty quickly ways to accommodate for that, whether it's slowing your speech, using simpler language, and even just using lots of hand gestures. This job, I thought seeing as I would be teaching the English language to foreign learners, there would be a high emphasis on grammar, like I had it on my foreign language classes growing up. This made me worried because I am by no means a grammar expert and have definitely forgotten a lot of the grammar rules I learned in school. Plus, it's just sometimes hard to explain why the English language is the way it is. Luckily, when coming to teach here, there isn't as much of an emphasis on teaching grammar than there is on teaching vocabulary and key expressions. Now, I can really only talk about this for elementary school because that is what I teach, so maybe it is a bit different for middle and high school. Maybe they do focus more on grammar, but definitely for elementary, which is a majority of the Epic jobs here, they mostly focus on vocabulary and key expressions. So, for example, in my 4th grade class, they're learning family vocabulary and how to ask and answer the question, who is he? Who is she? She is my mom. He is my brother. And then for my 6th grade class, they are learning job vocabulary and then ways to ask and answer the question, what do you want to be? I want to be a pilot. I want to be an artist. I'm good at drawing pictures. That sort of thing. Occasionally, grammar does come up in my classes, but it's not too often, and when it does, it has to do with a specific grammar point related to a specific key expression. So, for example, one of the key expressions my 6th graders learn is, what did you do for summer vacation? So they had to learn how to answer that question using the past tense and using different verbs in the past tense. So in that case, we do explain a bit further about past tense and that grammar point. And even then, my co-teacher really does that rather than me because it's a little bit more complicated to explain in English, and I think they just do a better job at that than maybe I would. Starting a job I had absolutely no background in, it was only natural to think this, right? The truth of the matter is, yeah, all of us have to start from somewhere, but how I look at it is, as long as you're open to learning, making some mistakes along the way, and improving yourself as a teacher, you have what it takes to be a great teacher here. And like I mentioned in my Challenges Teaching in Korea video, a lot of how I learned to do my job is on the job. And I can honestly say, after 3 years teaching here, I'm an infinitely better teacher now than when I first started, which is really just the goal, right? You just want to keep improving yourself and making yourself better. Plus, I feel like you learn so many new things and techniques just from the Epic orientation and even just observing your co-teachers throughout the year. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions or change up your lesson plan in the middle of class or after class when you see something's not working. Some of my best teaching strategies that I still use today came out of my most failed classes that I just reworked to make better. Now, I'm not sure how all offices of education decide what level of school you teach, but I know I was surprised when I was in orientation that the Daegu Office of Education actually told us they based it on what level you made your lesson plan for on your EPIC application. So I have to assume there is at least some reason behind what level of school they put you with besides the whole thing being completely random, at least sometimes, you know? And I think this is worth mentioning just because for those of you thinking about applying to EPIC or in the process of applying to EPIC, you just don't want to pick a random school level to make your lesson plan for, especially if, who knows, you know, the Metropolitan Office of Education could use that and say, hey, they made a lesson plan for high school, let's put her with high school. So just something to think about. So this is just something I assumed, and it was also emphasized in our EPIC orientation just to be ready to do so. However, in my 3 years teaching here, I just never found this to be the case. First of all, usually when teachers are required to be back at school is at least a few days to a week before the students actually arrive, just to allow for lesson planning and getting ready for those first few days of school. Then, when students do come back to school, that first day may be dedicated to your school's opening ceremony, so you won't even have to teach any classes that day. Finally, in my first year teaching here, when classes actually did start, my co-teachers allowed me to kind of sit back and just observe the first few classes, just to get comfortable and see how the classes were run. All in all, I feel like I had more than enough time once school began to kind of get my bearings, make an introduction presentation, and get anything else I needed to get together for those first few classes. Like, I wasn't teaching right from the jump. Another thing they emphasized in EPIC orientation, and in reality, you're only contracted to 22 teaching hours per week, and more than likely will have to teach multiple grades, so you won't be seeing your students on a regular basis. To be honest, when they say you are a GET, which is a guest English teacher, you're exactly that, a guest teacher in your co-teacher's classes. Again, I am only coming from this perspective of elementary school, where my co-teachers are very involved in my classes. I've heard some other things from middle and high school, but for the most part, my co-teachers are the main teachers of the English classes that I help out in, because they see the students every class, where I may see them every other class or maybe even every other week. So more than likely, they already have their own rules and reward systems in place that you just kind of follow along with. You know, I think this is a very common expectation for anyone looking to teach in Korea to have. I mean, you have to create full fleshed out lesson plans for your TEFL course, for your EPIC application, and even for your lesson demonstration during EPIC's orientation. But reality is, this is just not the case when you actually teach at your school. I actually think the only full lesson plans I've ever had to do while teaching here were for open classes or for summer and winter English camps, which even then for camps, those don't even have to be as detailed as the ones I had made, you know, before teaching in Korea. So I kind of already touched upon this in my last expectation, but I do want to mention that this was something I was really worried about before coming to Korea, just because I had very limited experience ever doing lesson plans, and like I had mentioned before, they had just seemed so long and complicated. However, in my experience here, lesson planning mostly just involves you having a conversation with your co-teacher and planning out what each of you will prepare for your next class, which in my case usually just involves a game or activity relating to the lesson and maybe a warm-up or review exercise. Additionally, you also have amazing file sharing websites out there like Courseshare and Waygook, where other English teachers in Korea share their materials they've made for the same topics and lessons you're doing. So sometimes lesson planning for you is as easy as downloading a file that another teacher has prepared for the exact same class. Admit, reading stories and watching a bunch of YouTube videos about what it was like to be Black in Korea made me have my worries about this. So when first arriving in Korea, I came into my school pretty much on my guard for any sideways looks, mistreatment, or ignorance that may come my way. And I have to say that I had absolutely nothing to worry about. To be honest, I have never felt any sort of negativity from the students or teachers in the 3 years I've taught here. At both my old and my new school, everyone has been so nice, so welcoming, and teachers have even been really excited to talk with me, learn more about me, and even practice their English with me. And then students could honestly care less. They treat me as any other foreign teacher that they've had. So I've honestly never felt judged or treated in a certain way because of my skin color. No, just no. I mean, kids are kids anywhere, and like anywhere else, you have your really well-behaved ones and the ones that cause a little bit more trouble. If anything, I'd say kids get away with a lot more here, just because not as much responsibility is put on them, especially when they're younger, and because of the cultural differences in disciplining here. So I don't know about you guys, but before I came to Korea and during my first year here, I heard that if you use any of your sick leave during the year, that could affect your chances of being renewed the next year. And this is mostly because taking sick days culturally is not too common here, even though we do receive them. I'm not exactly sure why. However, I've yet to find this to be true, just because I've had to use some of my sick leave every couple months for the past 3 years in order to go to the hospital and get medication for my condition. Yet my school repeatedly renewed me. Now, I'm not saying that this is a total lie, because I've read so much about it that I feel like it has had to come from somewhere. But, maybe times are changing, especially with this pandemic going on. Or maybe those people that posted about it were just at less forgiving schools or had less forgiving co-teachers. So after realizing that I wanted to live in Korea a lot longer than I originally planned, that's when I started to look at other cities I might want to live in, just to keep things fresh. I already knew I wanted to stay with the EPIC program, and being that I was already an EPIC teacher, I thought changing cities would be really easy. But that was not the case. So in order to change cities or offices of education within the EPIC program, you have to apply to EPIC all over again. That means redo the application, collect all the documents, and wait forever to hear about placements. And the same rules apply. The earlier you get your application in, the more likely you will get your preferred location. But you don't get any sort of special treatment in regards to placement because you're already an EPIC teacher. The only things that made reapplying somewhat easier are that you don't have to go to orientation again if you meet certain criteria. The interview is a lot simpler. You can actually get certified copies of some of your documents from your Office of Education, so you're not having to redo everything. And because you're already an EPIC teacher, you're probably more likely to get accepted again. Alright, so I hope this video was insightful and helped any of you looking to teach with Epic. If you have any questions for me, as always, feel free to leave a comment below, or if you have a suggestion on a video you would like to see in the future, let me know that too. I hope you guys have an amazing, wonderful day, and I will see you next time.